before we start the conversation. But for all of you who are still on with me at the moment, I am incredibly excited for this conversation on just how essential artificial intelligence is for really paving the way in the future of giving. So this is going to be very enlightening. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Alison Fine and Beth Kanter, Alison Fine is an entrepreneur, innovator, unapologetic feminist, and a community leader. So Alison has been a thought leader and social change leader, and has really advanced artificial intelligence for social good. So we're so excited to have you, Alison. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Beth has, I feel like she's such a major thought leader in our industry with over 35 years of experience working with the nonprofit sector and technology, training, capacity building, and so much more. So she's the author of several books. I recommend that you check them out. Network Nonprofit, Happy Healthy Nonprofit. And I'm so sorry, got my wires crossed. The Happy Healthy Nonprofit. And so I really encourage you to also take a look at Beth's blog, where she writes about digital transformation, networks, data, learning, training, and so much more. So I can't thank you both enough for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this was a question I posed earlier before we dive into everything, but what is one thing that you've started doing since this whole pandemic thing happened? Any new hobbies or habits?
I was running for Congress for most of it, so didn't have time for any hobbies in that regard. Does eating a lot of Haagen-Dazs make for a new hobby?
Yes, I think that definitely counts.
Well, one of my hobbies or activities that I've always done has been walking, and I have found that getting outside and just getting outside, and I can't do it now. I was going to say fresh air, haha, I'm in California, but when the fires are over and the air quality is better. But in fact, today it's not too bad. So like just getting out of the house and being able to put boundaries around my virtual work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think that's such a big challenge at the moment, where work and home are now sort of all in the same place. So but we have a wellness session coming up after that, and so I think we're going to be touching on that later. So
that's my other topic.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence and wellness.
Both very important. So I will, it's 2:00, so I'll let you get started screen sharing and you can take it away, and I'll launch the polls whenever you're ready.
Sure. So let me share the screen, and Alison, maybe since we already did the introductions, maybe you can just start with just that quick overview of the report.
Sure, happy to. The reason why we wanted to write this report right now is we feel that AI for philanthropy is at the heel of the hockey stick for adoption, right? There's rapid commercialization of products and rapid adoption by nonprofits. And in fact, it reminded Beth and me of that moment 10 years ago when we wrote the Network Nonprofit, of this formative moment in time where people are starting to use the tools, and we have an opportunity to shape the norms and the ethics of the use of the tools. And so that's what we wanted to do with this report, provide an early stamp on the tool set, what it is, how it works, why it's important for social change, and what we're hoping influencers and philanthropy and leaders in the nonprofit sector can do together to make sure that it works for good and not for evil.
Great. And of course, in this session, since we only have 45 minutes, we're just going to give you a taste of the report, but we'd encourage you to download the report at the URL down there, AI for Giving, the topics that we're going to cover. And as we're presenting, we really encourage folks to, ask their questions in the chat, and we will have some time at the end for Q&A. But we're going to start out with an artificial intelligence quiz because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. And we have a fun way to kind of clear those up. We're going to give you the basics, what fundraisers need to know about artificial intelligence. We'll talk about, we'll show you some examples, and we'll talk about the benefits there. We'll also talk about the challenges to adoption, and then leave you with some simple steps to get started, and then open it up for any questions. And both Alison and I sort of see this conversation as a beginning, not an end. So, and we're going to be talking a lot about this report, and I would be remiss if I didn't give credit to our research sponsor, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we're going to start with a little quiz, and the first question is, this is true or false quiz. AI is so smart that it does not need human intervention. So if we could cue up that quiz. Is that true or false? Or in this case, true or science fiction? Let's see. We'll give it a moment. I know Candace is operating our quiz so she can see how many people have taken it.
200 so far and climbing pretty fast. So give it another couple seconds here.
See, isn't this great when we have a crowd of nerds here?
Yes.
This is where we belong.
All right, let's show the results.
Let's do it. Share results.
False. Oh, great. All right. All right. We have a very smart, intelligent crowd here. So yes, false or science fiction. And Alison, why is that? Why is that science fiction? I mean, it's not like,
Question. I'm sorry, because I was on to the next question. Remind me of the question.
I mean, there's a couple of examples there, and I guess I'll explain those just really quickly. There is a researcher, and she's also a comedian. Her name is Janelle Shane, and she has a blog called AI Weirdness. And she actually tests something called neural networks, which are supposed to, it's an advanced type of AI that's supposed to learn and be super smart. But she tests it to show the limitations, in terms of human empathy and understanding really linguistics. And so she fed in, she created the neural network debater that would pick debating topics, and it's called The House Believes. And so it was trained on a database of 4,300 British parliamentary style debated resolutions. And all of them that they came up with were pretty funny to show how stupid they are. The House would allow parents to develop nuclear weapons. Well, maybe that's pretty accurate, huh? Mm-hmm. And the other example is from a neural network that's supposed to learn how to tell jokes, and they fed it a database of 43,000 jokes that it would study and discern patterns, and the jokes it came up with were worse than dad jokes. So it's not, it will get smarter as it gets developed, but it's not so smart that it's taking over our lives.
And well, we'll take off our lives in some ways, but the important point to contextualize it for social change, Beth, is that we can't hand over the coding to other people and just assume that it's all right and that it works contextually. Code in particular has trouble with empathy and trouble with discriminating. That discrimination can be built into the code. So that's why we want to bring this up. We want to raise those issues with folks.
Should we move to the next quiz question? And this is, robots will take over all the jobs in the nonprofit sector, including fundraisers, and maybe board members, and all staff members, maybe even those funders too. Is that true or false? We'll give it a second here.
Yeah.
Although I'm predicting, based on the pattern that I saw in the first question, I think we have a really artificially intelligent crowd. So
yeah,
I
think we've hit about 230 responses. I'll go ahead and share the results.
Great. Yes,
Yeah.
similar response rate. So, yeah. So what's the context, Alison, for social change around this? You know, why this is false?
So you and I have been writing and talking about this for so long, Beth, that it's not technology or people. It's always technology and people. And we're looking for ways to get the best out of both. So it's always important that it's a yes and in regards to technology.
And I know your favorite story is about that robot that's on the left. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about Flip. I'm sorry. I'm looking at you. Yes, there's a company in San Diego that installed these robots to cook and flip the burgers at a burger joint, and robots went so fast the people couldn't keep up with them, and it was about a week-long experiment that failed dramatically. And they really didn't think about context for the work that needed to be done in terms of just installing a robot.
And, you know, the one that's on the right is an example of a robotic floor cleaner that's in place at a supermarket chain, Giant Eagle. And I know before social distancing became the first line of defense against the virus, you know, automation had been gradually kind of replacing human work in a range of jobs, mostly kind of some of the scut work, if you will, to help increase efficiency. And so now that we have, you know, social distancing as a line of defense, I guess we're more open to the robots because we want to reduce that human-to-human contact so we don't catch the virus. And so I think some of this may reduce some of the unease about the robots, you know, taking our jobs. But I think as we resume daily life, I think we need to discuss the implications of automation on jobs and people and companies. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. So let's go to the next, which is only technologists should be involved in designing algorithms and apply AI. True or false? Shall we see what the results are?
Yeah, sure. There's still a bit more coming in. I think it's slowing down a bit. Seems like a good time to end it.
There we go. And the results? Great. So this one's we're a little bit unsure whether it's true or false. Interesting. So Alison, what's the context here?
And we're going to talk about this a little bit later. It's awfully important that we not turn over all of this technology just to coders, as I said before. In particular, what's exciting about this moment in time, Beth, is that we are seeing greater adoption of technology on the part of nonprofits. We're not seeing the resistance that we've seen recently to AI that we saw at the beginning with social media. So there's an opportunity for nonprofits to partner with technologists and make sure that it's a win-win.
And the two examples that you see here, the one on the left is a guidebook from Google that they've recently developed, and it's really all about participatory AI, and it's really how to involve the stakeholders who may be impacted by the decisions that the AI and the algorithm will make. And the one on the right is, and we'll talk about this one in a great detail, is really about that that algorithms have the potential to be very biased and to actually to cause harm. And so this is the algorithmic vulnerability bounty project. So it's testing a system where people can report these biases, all with the, we need to have non-technologists also involved in this conversation. It can't just be the techies. So those are just a few kind kind of misconceptions or myths that we wanted, or science fiction that we wanted to punch down before we started. So let's get into, whoops, I don't know, yes, here we go, about, I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong button. There we go. About what fundraisers should know about artificial intelligence. So we're going to start with a simple definition. We'll give you a quick definition of how it's used in the social sector. And you know, in our report, we go into a lot more detail about this. So we're just really giving you the top line. So what is AI? I'm constantly trying to find ways to describe it in non-technical terms so we can involve the non-technologists, right? So it's basically, you know, it's really the official definition of artificial intelligence is that we could give computers have the ability to do tasks that only humans could do before. And that particular task is pattern matching. And if any of you are parents, you might have used flashcards to teach your kids to read, and you show the picture of the apple and you say apple, and the kid sees the apple and says apple. Well, that's pattern matching at its most simplest. And so for artificial intelligence to work, it requires these 4 components, you know, a strategic purpose, data, algorithms, and tools. And I also want to note that, you know, we use the term artificial intelligence or machine learning kind of as bucket tools, but the technology was really discovered over 60 years ago, and it's really blossomed into this really in-depth field of computer science that has many subsections like robots and tech, you know, natural language programming and blah, blah, blah. But so, and we'll talk a little bit about that by pointing out the different types, but at its core, it needs a strategic question or purpose. In this case, for fundraiser, it would be, how can we expand giving? Or how can we make the donor experience better? Data, lots of it. Algorithms, which are mathematical equations. And of course, tools, computers, cameras, audio, whatever the tool is needed. Now, you're probably wondering why there's a cat there. And I guess all the NP Tech nerds know that we like to talk about cats and dogs to explain things. And I found a wonderful little case study about, you know, that explains how AI works using cats. So this was something that was built by an Amazon engineer, and he was tired of his cat bringing in dead animals, you know, mice and birds into his house through the cat door. So he decided to use AI to solve the problem. One could say, is that the right problem to solve? But it's a great illustration. So his strategy question was, how do I stop my cat from bringing dead birds or mice into the house? So, so in terms of tools, he decided to hook up the cat flap with an AI-enabled camera and an automated locking device. All right, so he got the tools. The next thing he needed was to collect some data. And so this data was in the form of capturing pictures of the cat going in and out of the house. And the pictures were the cat with prey, the cat without prey, the cat leaving the house, the cat ending the house. And so we had several thousand of these photos, which were then labeled with those different categories that I just mentioned. And so then the next thing he needed was an algorithm, which is basically the mathematical equation or some rules. And it was something like, if the cat is approaching the house with prey in its mouth, shut the cat flap and text my phone and automate a donation to the Audubon Society. So that's just a simple explanation of how AI works. So over to Alison.
Yeah, so the first area that we've seen AI in the social sector is this new area over the last 5 years or so called AI for Good. And it's not surprising that this is the first area of use for AI, because when you look at big problems that we have, for instance, climate change or education or migration of refugees around the world, these are problems that are creating an enormous amount of data and are ripe for looking at patterns using algorithms and AI. And So we are seeing AI being used in environmental areas, as I mentioned, in looking to see, for instance, UNICEF the UN is doing this of where to send refugees, where there are beds and places for people to stay. And we can see that kind of application could happen in cities for real-time help for people. And just to add on to what Beth was saying, what's important to notice and to know about AI is that it is like invisible netting all around us, and it is going to be applied in every part of our life. And this is AI for good, is where we have just been beginning to see it applied for social change. And also what led us to looking at AI for giving, because we thought it was the natural next step.
Great, and the AI for good is probably a little bit more developed field. It's a little bit more sexier than infrastructure. And also a lot of mostly larger, some smaller nonprofits are teaming up with different technology companies who are providing the expertise and the tools to help solve these problems. So here it's another example of involving the non-techies. And it's a collaborative effort to where we have those that know the problem teaming up with the technical people. And an example of that is USA for UNHCR. And they have a collaboration with Stanford University, the Sustainability and Artificial Intelligence Lab, Maxar Technologies, which is a satellite imaging company. And the type of AI that they're using is technically called computer visioning, because just like the algorithm that examined the cat photos, that's the process here. They are looking at satellite photos of different refugee camps, because refugee camps have a lot of overcrowding. And so they're looking to see, based on the satellite images, like, what's going on in the camps, how can it be redesigned to better serve refugees. And two things here. One is the efficiency thing, because in the past it required having a whole team of people go through this very extensive long-term kind of process to kind of survey and map it on the ground. And now with coronavirus, it's even more difficult to do. So so this allows them, they've done a pilot with one camp, but then they'll be able to scale this across different refugee camps. Great, so let's get into what everyone's here for, right? Examples around AI for giving, how it's already being used in the fundraising sector, and I'm gonna turn it over to Alison.
So when we begin to look at the benefits of AI for giving, we're beginning to see in this nascent field now the ways that AI can be used in developing patterns to help people who are trying to raise money identify donors and help to renew those donors, and and help manage that relationship with donors, which is something we're going to talk about in a second. And then the flip side of that, how to help donors better understand a field. And we can now think of the opportunity to customize philanthropy for everyday donors, people giving $500 and less, which would be unthinkable in an analog world where only the highest donors get that kind of customized service in figuring out philanthropy. So there is a whole lot of really exciting opportunities coming on board right now with AI for giving.
Yeah, and I think we're at this inflection point, as you mentioned earlier, at the heel of the hockey stick. And while we're just seeing, it's not full-scale adoption yet. We're just seeing some, of the early adoption. And we really have this opportunity to proactively really shape the tools if we're involved. So just a quick couple of examples and benefits. So the first one is donor prediction and automated stewardship. And so what you're seeing there is a tool called Gravity, which works over Salesforce. And what it has the ability to do is it's designed for major gift officers. So it could swim through their large databases and really pinpoint the people who are ripe for cultivation and for making a gift, and can assemble information about them and see patterns. And this type of research, I don't know if we have any major gifts people in the audience, but it is quite time consuming because it's, you know, a lot, and require, you know, 20 hours per week of desk work, but the AI allows this to happen, you know, in a matter of minutes to provide kind of a baseline of swimming through all that data, synthesizing it, and saying, here are the top 20 people that you may consider cultivating. And so that frees up that major gifts officer time to really focus on the relationship building, which is so important. The other example on the right is from Neon One, and this is a mobile database. And I think this is more designed for smaller organizations where you may be doing a lot of prospecting, whether it's corporate prospects, major gifts, middle gifts, you know, everything. And I think there, the biggest thing is like, where is prioritization and information management? So here, the AI is being used to help that fundraising person who's doing a wide range in their job, like prioritize their work and know where to spend their time. I think this one's mine. This one, okay, so a lot of us are involved in online fundraising campaigns, I suspect, and more and more the platforms are going to be the holders of the AI. So it's going to behoove us to understand how different platforms and tools and how their algorithms work. But two quick examples here. One on the left is from Quilt AI. It has an algorithm that looks at, that enables you to analyze your messaging. It's a machine learning analytics program. So it's able to go through and analyze the type of messaging that you're sending out there maybe through email, through social media, and help you really refine that messaging so it's matching and reaching the right prospects. The same with Persado. Persado has Persado does some interesting things in that it will not only just A/B test, but based on the results of that and looking at your data, it will suggest to you a number of other A/B tests, like different subject lines that you should test and generate them. So it helps make some of the messaging and the targeting and refining in your online fundraising campaigns a little bit more effective. And this is chatbots. This is the one that we all kind of know about, and I think it's become more ubiquitous because of Facebook Messenger bots have made it really easy for anybody just to turn on a bot, but doesn't necessarily mean that bot is effective. I think the most interesting example of a fundraising bot is not necessarily to ask people for money. I think that's misguided, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But here to help potential donors or current donors find information on your site. So the example we see here is from Miracle Extra Life Network. It's Children's Miracle Hospitals. They have this 24-hour online gaming fundraiser type of thing. And when people are signing up for it, there's lots of questions. And so they use the chat bot as kind of like an information butler or concierge. So the donor doesn't have to swim through all the information on the site and can find it very quickly. And the example you're seeing there is that they do have a lot of Canadian donors. So a frequent question they were getting was, you know, what's the value of my donation in Canadian dollars? And they don't have to work too hard to find that. A really good bot like this one is not a plug and play messenger bot. It really takes, I love the term socialization. It needs to be trained with real humans. It needs to develop a glossary of the types of questions. And I think the process is really good because it really helps you think about like the donor end, not the nonprofit end.
So now we get to flip over the equation because we know that the field of philanthropy is not just fundraising, but it's also trying to make a good match between a donor and a cause. And here's Philanthropy Cloud, which is the product of Salesforce that the United Ways are using. And the idea here is to get the preferences, to know the preferences of donors well enough to begin to match them up with various causes. The opportunities here, and again, we're talking about using lots and lots of data, both about donors and about causes to make that good match, is that you can personalize the match for lower dollar donors in a way that we never could have done before, and that we can highlight smaller causes that will get lost in a system like something as large as the United Ways, where the larger causes tend to be the go-to places for donating over and over again. here's an opportunity for startups and for smaller causes and for maybe, you know, a little bit off the beaten track kind of causes to get highlighted and to find new donors. So I think this is a very exciting development here.
Right, and the last one we'll show you is voice-activated fundraising. So, you know, your Alexa or your Echo or whatever audio device you might have, Siri, are examples of that. And just think of them as bots that can recognize what you're saying and talk and respond based on being trained and based on an algorithm. So I think we're at this is very embryonic, I think, voice-activated fundraising, having fundraising appeals embedded in the voice-activated device. So we're there's wider adoption of these devices, just, you know, despite some privacy issues, but more and more people are adopting them. We've seen a few examples like Red Nose Day, incorporating voice-activated giving into its strategy. And communities and schools, the example there on the right, used Alexa to encourage donors to donate a backpack full of school supplies for students in need. It's, you know, it's still unclear yet whether this is yet a major fundraising channel, but it's going to probably become more prevalent. What I'm kind of waiting for is the kind of, you know, Alexa, order my dog food. And I want Alexa to say, yes, but let me tell you about, you know, the local humane society. Would you like to go walk the dogs, or would you like to make a donation? I don't think we're quite there yet. And of course, all that brings up some ethical concerns that we'll talk about in a bit. So those are some of the examples, benefits. There's a lot more in the report. We encourage you to read that. Let's talk a little bit about the future.
Yeah, if you want to click one more, Beth, I really do want to just dive into relational. So what we've talked about so far is doing more and smarter fundraising and giving. But our ultimate hope, the reason why you and I are excited about this, is the opportunity to do fundraising in a much more relational way, because the cancer of this sector in terms of fundraising, and I use that word deliberately, is the donor retention, the low donor retention rates, right? That we know that if you have 100 donors in year one, by year 5, you only have 10 left. And we don't talk about this much as a sector. And the conventional wisdom is to do more and more and more quickly, and to make sure we're asking and asking people. And the fundraising professionals will say that works. And you and I both know that what it does is it drives a lot of people away. So when we have these tools in place that can automate a lot of the rote tasks for fundraising, that can do a lot of the, you know, answer the frequently asked questions and do the analysis that takes up so much time. Well, what are you going to do with that free time? We hope that what we'll do is spend an awful lot of time in building relationships with donors, asking them about their stories, turning one-way communication channels into two-way, co-creating, co-problem solving with people, and building networks of donors. That to us is one of the most exciting promises of the new technology, but it is an enormous pivot from the standard transactional fundraising that has held this sector captive for decades right now.
Great, and I just want to build on that too. I know we're in this point where we may be reducing staff and budgets and resources, and so I think this will be a great help when if you know, organizations that have to reduce their budgets and have to, you know, shorten the number of staff, and this can at least help us retain our efficiency and our effectiveness given constricting resources. The next idea is probably in the future, maybe 5 years. You know, something that we put our crystal balls on, and we were trying to think, what can we imagine, you know, as we have fuller adoption in the sector? And of course, this was thinking about it pre-COVID, and I think it even makes more sense post-COVID, as we're constricting and sort of emerging and trying to rebound from COVID. So we imagine some possibilities of 3 different scenarios to expand everyday giving. Maybe there would be real-time funding for emergency needs that can be leveraged across different giving systems, maybe a way of having kind of a Yelp for causes. So individuals were more connected socially, but also being able to rate that, but do it at scale, and having those personalized recommendations happen. And there's something we called a lifestyle dashboard. And I think United Ways are really at the forefront of creating personal giving dashboards for workplace giving, but maybe we could also see this as individual donors. And so I think that idea really stretches the idea for a philanthropy to include purchasing power as a powerful tool for change, as we start to think about people may not have the ability to give as much money, but maybe there could also be other ways and other definitions of generosity, like buying certain products to support certain groups.
And let me just add a little bit onto that, Beth, I'm so glad you raised it, of the opportunity to use this moment to think differently and maybe to free us up from some of the fears that we had before. Because for many nonprofits, this year, our worst fears happened. It's just been such a dreadful year all around. And maybe that's an opportunity to take some more risks and to work differently and to imagine a different kind of future. And we hope that folks can do that, and we want to help them to do that, because again, this is such a painful moment in time, and it would be a wonderful outcome of the pandemic, of the economic depression, would be remaking the field of giving and philanthropy.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe kind of sum up that AI has this enormous capacity to help us scale giving by personalizing the ask, by matching donors, by helping us be more efficient, allowing us to more focus on the relationships. But do we want, so it is that time to rethink the practice. Do we want to scale bad practices that we've had in the past, or do we want to sort of open it up?
Yeah.
So let's move on to, not to be Debbie Downers, we have to, of course, mention some of the challenges. It's not all roses. There are a few thorns.
And it's important to raise them now, because one of our biggest fears is repeating the mistakes we just made with social media. So we're hoping that we can create momentum for a sector-wide conversation about how to do this era of technology better. So one of the huge challenges is, we know clean data sets have always been a problem in the sector. Not only do they need to be clean, they need to be enormous. And because of that, actually, to jump to point to the third bullet here, because it requires such clean data sets and people with such great expertise, we are going to need to work with outside platforms. And we saw that in several of the examples we just raised, which raises the problems we just had with a platform like Facebook, right? That when you're sending your data to someone else, and now we as the nonprofit sector always feel like little sisters to commercial technology platforms. And we are working under their ethical framework. And instead, we're hoping the nonprofit sector right now can say, no, this is the expectations we have for using data ethically and using it well, making sure that, for instance, people know that they're talking to robots. We think that's awfully important. Making sure that users understand how their data are being used and can opt out if that's not how they want it used. And to make sure that always we're thinking about the impact on end users, end clients, and communities, that we're thinking about diversity and inclusion, and we're thinking about getting bias out of the code as well.
Great. Thank you, Alison, for that succinct summary of challenges. And I think we'll just leave you with a couple of high-level getting started steps. You know, I guess this is the so what, or the what's next. So I guess, you know, really thinking about the strategic purpose for using the tools, pressure test your ideas, you know, with technologists and non-technologists. AI, you know, it may not be the right, you know, technology to solve a particular problem. Also, I think we're going to have to go, as Alison laid out before, the case for moving from the transactional to the relational, and the use of your newly found free time. It's, you know, a mind shift, a culture shift in organizations. Also thinking about your data, and you know, and really storing that. And also, you know, there's always that sort of technology deficit, if you will, skills deficit. And maybe that makes us withdrawal from it, but like to get access to people with the expertise who can build those algorithms and predictive models, or can evaluate the off-the-shelf models. Get educated. I'm a board member of NTEN, and I know NTEN's working on some data ethics policies. The NTC is a terrific place to get more education about this technology. So I'd encourage you to do that. And also to continue to have a discussion strategy leading to a plan around those ethical concerns, particularly around donor privacy and data bias. So with that, I think we'll pause now for any questions.
Candace, maybe you have a question or two.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been so enlightening and just different. I mean, I think I haven't really seen this talked about very much in our sector. And so it's been really enlightening to see the practical ways that nonprofits can really start using technology to basically streamline their work and help them get more donations and more personalized touch with their donors. So I want to turn it over to see if there are any questions in the chat. So anyone that has any questions about how you can implement AI at your organization, please feel free to go ahead and chat those in now. Beth, thanks for putting in that link. So Elaine asks, how do you feel about personalized appeals, and how much and how personal?
Well, that's one of the great promises of this technology, Elaine and Candace, in that we'll be able to personalize appeals at scale. So imagine if you had a donor base, I'm making up of 5,000 people, and before personalization was a name and an amount. Now you would have those things, of course, but you would also have maybe reference to a story that somebody had, or a passion that they have, or a specific instance of something happening in your program you can refer them to, and this could be different for every donor. And that's just sort of mind-blowing to be able to do that at scale. But again, in order to do that, what needs to be included in the data is having taken the time to have the donors tell you what their interests are. That's when we start to begin to flip it to relational.
Fantastic, fantastic. So just like basically using chat boxes and anything else you can imagine to just gather that valuable donor information so that you can, yeah, basically target your messages.
Well, think about this, Candace. I mean, we just never ever think about, because we're so stretched for time, right? And so many of our nonprofits are not only under-resourced revenue-wise, but understaffed, enormously understaffed. We can't even imagine taking a couple of hours a day and just talking to donors about, Candace, tell me about a time where you felt joy, or tell me why this cause is particularly resonant to you. Being able to have that time, once we have the AI tools doing a lot more of the rote work, to have that interaction and to really be able to plug into the experiences and emotions of donors in really authentic ways. Now we're talking game changing, I think.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I keep on thinking about And I know it's a workplace giving example, but it's something that could also be applied to nonprofit fundraising. But the example from Philanthropy Cloud of their workforce having the option of, you know, signing up to volunteer or to make a donation to a charity, and it was very like user focused to find out. Well, the first complaint they got, we can't see, you know, with the interface design, we can't see the ones that we're really interested in. Why are you showing me everything? And so that's where the AI has done a really great job at, you know, the donor, potential donor might fill out a form to register for the system and say what they're interested in. So that's one form of data that goes into the algorithm. And then the other form of data is their actual behavior. So let's say somebody is interested, I'll use the dog analogy because I love dogs, that somebody wants to support the local shelter, that they want to volunteer to walk the dogs at their local shelter. So then the system would only show them, the system would know where they live, based on their address information, and based on this interest, it would only show them opportunities to volunteer at a shelter that's nearby. And then it might even know that it's signed up for, you know, to do a volunteer job. And then the system might send a text message after they volunteer to say, how was your experience? You know, and if they, on a scale of 1 to 5, was it amazing or was it not so good? If it was not so good, some information might get sent to the nonprofit saying, oh, your volunteer didn't have a great experience, and you may want to think how, you know, you might want to follow up with them. If it was a 5, the system might then say, would you be interested in donating? So that's the kind of thing that AI can do on a much larger scale than we humans can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you were saying earlier, it's all a way to retain donors. Like at the end of the day, like, you know, I mean, of course you probably can use it to convert donors as well, but it's all about driving more donor retention and engaging more. And so I think that's something that, I mean, here at CauseVax, we've seen that that's even more important during this time that we're in, because like retaining donors, I think, is more important than ever, because I think there is a little bit of a challenge in gaining new donors. So
it's also, you know, it's 7 times more expensive to acquire a new donor than to keep the old one. And we don't really calculate that, you know, you don't see that built into nonprofit budgets. You just see a revenue number for the year, but not a donor retention number in budgets. So this is where the relational piece comes in.
yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, we have another question. Samantha asks, how much time does teaching a chat box to answer your questions take? It seems like a large undertaking for a small nonprofit.
You know, that's a really great question. And sometimes it depends on, you know, it depends on the like kind of glossary of questions that it needs to be trained on, and what people are asking. And then also what type of chat bot artificial intelligence that lies underneath you're using, because it's different. So Facebook Messenger bots kind of work more like rules-based, like you have to sort of anticipate what the questions might be, give the user potential answers, and like, you know, like they ask, what time is your office open? Or what is your zip code? And then, you know, to program our zip code, to answer that question with, our zip code is this, right? So, so some of that is like really knowing your audience really well and knowing the kind of information, and you may already have that in place. And you'll be able to test that. If you're using something that's built on natural language processing or something like the IBM programs, the chat needs to be socialized and tested with different questions and exposed to different pilots to see what users are asking, and then it learns and it gets wrapped into its repertoire of responses.
I think it's important to remind folks that this is not an activity, it's a process that happens over time, and you can continue to improve the reactivity of the AI bot or AI system as it learns and as you learn. So it's not something that's going to take 3 weeks of time, you know, flat out in the beginning. It's something you're going to do over time.
And I think it behooves us like really take a human-centered design approach.
Yeah.
And really not, you know, focus on what's the donor experience and what are the questions that they have that we can serve versus this is what we want them to know, or this is what we think they might want.
Right. Keep flipping it over and keep testing it in real time with human beings. We're in favor of human beings, Candace. We like them.
Yes. Yes.
Same here. Same here. Okay, great. I have one or two more questions to run by you. So William asks, how can very small nonprofits get access to AI capabilities?
So, William, this is why this is the tipping point, because the commercial platforms we've been talking about during this session are available and mostly affordable for very small nonprofits. So that's what makes this time for us seem so reflective of 10 years ago when social media was really, really zooming in terms of adoption. The flip side, of course, is that because we need these commercial platforms, it puts us at their mercy in some ways of their rules and you know, their costs, but it is available right now. So a tool like Gravity is absolutely available for a small nonprofit to afford and to use.
And I think we have a couple more questions coming in, so I'll keep you for just one more. I think this is an interesting question. Is it ethical for us folks serving great causes for humanity to be overly excited about AI, knowing that there is an evil flip side to it?
You know, I think we have to be careful about buying into the evil flip side narrative on one level. There is an evil flip side to it, you know, around the, and that's why we have to pay attention to ethics and what Alison outlined. But there has been popularized in the media that, you know, the robots are so smart they're going to take over, and I think Elon Musk is one of those that's sort of perpetuating this view. You know, the robots are evil, and I think a lot of that has been, you know, just blown out of proportion. I mean, if you were one of the richest people in the world and you were the, you were the alpha, when you would be afraid of the evil robots, right? But according to one study that we looked at in terms of like super intelligent AI, they say that, you know, 50 artificial intelligence computer scientists interviewed in this report said that that's probably at least 30 or 40 years away from that. You know, that the super smart, intelligent machines are really just still babies. The evil side is about the ethics, and I'm going to hand that over to Alison.
Look, the reality is AI is expanding enormously quickly into every part of our lives. You cannot find a sector, an area, a part of your life where AI isn't coming online very, very quickly. So the important question now isn't whether to use it or not to use it. The important question is, how can we get really smart about adopting it and using it for good? And to do something as a sector we've never done before, which is to get ahead of the curve instead of behind it.
Absolutely. Sorry, I think some people just wanted a quick recap of some of the tools that they could use. If you have any suggestions for that.
I think they ought to go to the report.
Yes, go to the report. Right. I'm pasting that in the chat again for everyone.
And as Beth so smartly said, this is the beginning of a conversation. This is actually our first presentation on the report.
Yeah.
So this will be a conversation we'll continue to have with folks over time.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much, Alison and Beth. This has been such an interesting and insightful conversation. And I really look forward. I encourage everyone who is attending, please go ahead, download the report. We were, honored to have the first presentation on this. It's a big deal. So appreciate it. And for anyone that's interested, I also recommend checking out Beth and Alison's websites so that you can take a look at their other content, their books, and then other incredible services that they provide to organizations. So yeah, couldn't be more appreciative. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Stay well.
Awesome. Take care.